At first, Mr. Liao Fan also changed through behavior. We see him accomplishing his 3,000 good deeds over 10 years. Taking this long to accomplish this amount of good deeds is really not that outstanding. The second time, he only took 4 years to accomplish the next 3,000 good deeds when he sought and attained a son. But that time was still fairly long. Truthfully speaking, the result attained was as sought, to change through behavior. In Buddhism, to change through behavior is abiding by the precepts. There are 8 schools in Mahayana Buddhism and 2 schools in Theravada Buddhism. However, both start their cultivation from abiding by the precepts. In other words, cultivation through behavior. This is especially true for the Theravada precepts, which emphasize behavior and the intention or the thought. This is different from Mahayana precepts, like those in the Brahma Net Sutra. This particular sutra was not completely translated into Chinese. It is a somewhat lengthy sutra, of which only the most important chapter, the Mind Precept chapter, which comprised of 2 rolls, was brought to China. The first roll explains the state of mind of a bodhisattva. The second roll explains the bodhisattva precepts and behavior. Truthfully speaking, what is important is the state of mind. The first section emphasizes changing from the heart, from the mind, to reform. The latter section emphasizes changing through behavior. Naturally, to change from the mind as well as through behavior would be the best way to reform ourselves. From the text. However, it is 100 times harder if we force ourselves not to do something than if we just stopped doing it naturally. If we do not uproot our faults, but merely suppress them, the faults will eventually resurface, even if we have temporarily stopped committing them. Therefore, the method of changing through behavior cannot help us to permanently rid ourselves of our faults. End quote. The root of our problems lies in our minds. If we only suppress our faults instead of eliminating them, they will simply reappear at another time, even if we have temporarily stopped committing them. Therefore, the method of changing through behavior is not permanent. It is not the best way, for it only treats the symptom. It is treating the head when we have a headache, treating the foot when our foot has pain. This leaves the root problem intact, not uprooted and eradicated. In other words, the behavior may seem all right, but the mind remains polluted. The outside seems all right, but within is not. From the text. We can try to reform by refraining from wrongdoings, by understanding the reason and principle behind why we should not do something. In the instance of killing, we can reform through contemplating that loving all living things is a virtue of heaven. All living beings love life and are afraid to die. How can I be at peace with myself by taking another's life to nurture my own? At times, animals were even cooked alive, such as fish or crabs. They may not have been completely slaughtered before going into the cooking pot. Such pain and suffering reach down into the very bones. How can we be so cruel to them? When we eat, we use all kinds of expensive and tasty things to nourish our bodies, enough to fill the whole dinner table. But once the meal is done, even the best delicacies will become body waste and be excreted. The result of our killing accomplishes nothing. Consuming vegetarian foods can fill and nourish us just as well. Why let our stomach become a graveyard and reduce our good fortune through the violation of killing? End quote. Here Mr. Liao talks of changing through reasoning. We want to know the true reality, to think of its principles, its logic. Then we will naturally no longer have the heart to eat the flesh of another sentient being. Before, we were not clear on the reasoning and tried to do something very grudgingly. Trying to force ourselves to do something is extremely difficult. We will not be happy or willing and can end up painfully struggling with ourselves. Once we understand the principles, the logic, the reasoning, we can reconcile these problems. Thus, we need to constantly bear in mind that loving all things is a virtue of heaven. It is natural for us to do so. Especially now, even scientists are coming to understand this. Today, we speak of the natural ecological balance. This is the same as loving all living beings. Our ecological system is naturally balanced. If this balance is destroyed, all sentient beings in this world will suffer the consequences. Therefore, those who are wise will do nothing that will result in destroying our ecological system. Actually, of all the animals, humankind is the worst, for we are the most cruel, the most evil. Tigers and poisonous snakes only kill when they are hungry. After their hunger has been satisfied, they do not even pay attention when other animals walk back and forth in front of them. This shows they killed from natural instinct. But it is different for humans. We have no need to kill. On the contrary, we slaughter at will. Few animals create negative karma. Think about it. The negative karma created by humans is unequaled by animals. When we consider this, we will realize that there is nothing in the six realms for us to be proud of. It is great suffering to fall into the animal realms. However, animals at least do not create negative karma. They are reducing theirs. If we do not practice Buddhism, when we have obtained a human body, then we have wasted this life. We commit wrongdoings daily. Animals reduce their karma. We create it. When their karma has been eliminated, they will emerge and be born into the three good realms. On the other hand, our negative karma has increased, and when it comes into fruition, we will fall into the three bad realms. They prepare to emerge from, we prepare to go into. What is there for us to be proud of? All these are simple truths. We need to understand them. We need to remember that all sentient beings are mortally afraid to die. When we kill them, it is because they were unable to resist. Talk about the weak being the prey of the strong. They had no way to resist. Unable to resist, were they willing? If not, then be assured that they will have resentment and anger. How will we be able to avoid revenge that will in turn breed further revenge? Once a fellow practitioner came to teacher and asked if there was any use in transcending the souls of aborted babies. He said, "No use. You think transcending them will change anything? Will solve things?" The practitioner asked, "But if the child was born deformed or retarded, would it not undergo much suffering? Would it not be better to abort it?" Teacher replied, "We need to understand that bearing a deformed or retarded baby is bearing one who has come to demand payment of a debt. You owe a debt. By aborting the baby, are you not only allowing the debt not to be claimed, but you have killed him or her? In other words, the debt you owed in the past has now become magnified. In a future life, it will be terrible. Right now, scientists only see what is right in front of us. They do not know of cause and effect of the next lifetime. Cause and effect are connected in the 3 times of the past, present, and future. This is a terrible offense. The practitioner persisted, but the baby has yet to take shape. There have only been 2 to 3 weeks of gestation. Teacher said, no. When it comes to reincarnation, it has nothing to do with taking shape or not. Once it has reincarnated, it has found you. You have this affinity with it from the past. Whether it is repaying a gratitude or a grievance, demanding payment of a debt or repaying a debt. If the baby had come to repay a gratitude and you killed it, you would be returning kindness with ingratitude. It would become your enemy in the future. Perhaps it was a filial child, virtuous grandchild, come to repay kindness, but by killing, you have turned the baby into a mortal enemy. This is terrible. You are trying to accomplish a little merit by spending a small amount of money, thinking you can transcend this baby by erecting a plaque. Nothing is this easy. You are deceiving yourself. This is not the truth. Therefore, if everyone could just see that past cause and the resultant effort, it would be terrifying. We have to be careful. We have to understand the principles, have to know the true reality. It is a grave transgression to kill or to harm another sentient being, to nurture ourselves. However, today, people regard this as perfectly normal. Some religions even think that these animals were creations of a God given to them to eat. If these sentient beings were intended for us to eat, then would we not question whether God truly had the virtue of loving all living beings? This is wrong thinking, which leads us to commit many serious transgressions. And we do not even know how wrong they are. All sentient beings, when killed and slaughtered, cry out from their fear and their pain. When we listen to their terrified cries, how could anyone think they willingly submitted to their death? in affluent countries, factory farming has become the accepted way of supplying the large demand for the consumption of meat. It is the awareness of this that has become a major factor in many Westerners becoming vegetarian, myself included. Most people have an image of animals on a farm, gracefully grazing peacefully in sun-drenched meadows, where there is an abundant supply of grass, space, and water. This is a dream from the past. It is not the reality of the factory farm today. Calves are raised in pens so small they do not even have room to turn around. They are purposely restrained so they will remain as fat as possible. They are slaughtered when they are only a few months old, when their flesh tastes the best. Geese are fattened by being force-fed with a tube thrust down their throat as the food is pumped into their stomachs. In the process, their throats can become ruptured, and the suffering is immeasurable. Chickens are raised in pens made of wire mesh. To keep them from moving and wasting energy, their feet are stapled to the bottom of the pens. Over innumerable lifetimes, we have been born as animals. Our parents, children, friends, those we love also have lived innumerable lifetimes as animals. The calf, the goose, the chicken we eat today could easily have been someone we loved in our last lifetime. We now eat their flesh. It is stated in the sutras, a human dies and becomes a sheep. A sheep dies and becomes a human. Life after life, they kill each other, seeking revenge. Thus it is said that if you eat 8 ounces of flesh, you will pay back 8 ounces of flesh. A debt of money must be repaid in cash, and a life owed must be repaid in kind. This is the immutability of the law of cause and effect. Once we truly accept and believe this, we will never again have a thought of harming any sentient being. Why? We do not want to pay back with our lives in the future. Nor do we want to seek ill-gotten wealth. Why? Because we know if we do, then in the future we will have to repay this debt as well. By understanding the true reality, we naturally will be able to abide by the law, be content with what we have, and be honest in everything we do. Be assured that this is neither passive nor regressive, but it is to do our best to create a beautiful and bright future for ourselves. It is to seek a good life, not only for this lifetime, but for all our future lifetimes as well. Without wisdom and without knowing the true reality, we will not be able to attain what we seek. Mr. Liao Fan was speaking of eating animal flesh. We see sentient beings being killed. We see their pain and suffering, which reach down into the very bones. How could we bear to take their life to nurture our own? Besides, once we have finished eating, even the most delicious foods will become body waste. People long for delicacies, long for food that tastes good. But no matter how we cook it, the only thing that will know and enjoy the taste is our tongue. Nothing after that, just for a few seconds of enjoyment. We have killed countless sentient beings, have committed innumerable transgressions. Eating vegetarian foods can be just as fulfilling and nourishing. Some say that vegetarian food is not nutritious. Actually, many vegetarians have lived long and healthy lives. Many monks and nuns became vegetarians when they were very small and are very strong and healthy now. How can we say it is not healthy to be a vegetarian? All these are incorrect ideas. When we take the life of another sentient being and eat their flesh to nurture ourselves, we not only make enemies and incur their hatred for us, but we also reduce our own good fortune. A truly intelligent person would never do this. From the text. Think again of all the living beings with flesh and blood. Like us, they have a consciousness since they possess self-awareness. They and we are one entity. We can cultivate virtue and allow these living beings to respect and feel safe around us. How can we continue to harm them and make them hate us? If we think about it, we will naturally feel sorrow for these animals and be unable to swallow their flesh. End quote. All living creatures not only possess life, but have self-awareness. They are no different from us. From this segment of the text, it is logical to assume that Mr. Liao Fan's family have become vegetarians, for they understand the reasoning and they now know the true reality. Nowadays, there are still some people that have the wrong ideas, thinking that adults can become vegetarians, but that it is not safe for children to do so. This thinking is incorrect. Actually, this is akin to thinking that the children might not have enough karmic obstacles, might have too few mortal enemies, so we should help them incur more mortal foes. This is what it amounts to. If we explain this to them, not only do they not believe, but they criticize, saying that we are out of touch, that we are ignorant of science and nutrition. In fact, this is not the case at all. They are mistaken. It is best to be awakened as early as possible. The younger children are in becoming vegetarian, the better off they will be. It will help them to build a solid foundation of good fortune and merit. As the Infinite Life Sutra and the Sutra of Good Fortunes and Misfortunes said, the ancestors were ignorant. The ancestors here are the elder generations. They have no wisdom. Thus, they lead us to unwittingly commit transgressions, creating much negative karma. Simply put, this matter is appalling, for the offense is indeed serious. From the text. Another example of changing is through reasoning, is the person who often gets angry. They need to stop and think that everyone has his or her individual strengths and weaknesses. According to my reasoning, if I touched on someone else's weakness, I should feel sorry for that weakness and forgive any shortcomings. If someone offends me for no reason at all, then it is that person's problem and has nothing to do with me. There is no reason for me to get angry. End quote. In the past, we tended to lose our tempers, to have the mind of anger. We would do well to sincerely reflect within, remembering that we are only humans, that we all have our faults. Other people have faults, so do we. If we cannot forgive their shortcomings, how can we expect them to forgive ours? When we think about this, we will no longer condemn them for their weaknesses, but we will feel sorry for them. People only make mistakes due to their ignorance, their foolishness. They do not yet have the ability to distinguish between true and false, proper and deviated, harmful and beneficial. Thus, they cannot correct themselves, cannot end their erroneous ways, and cultivate kindness. We should feel sorry for them and not reproach them. In so doing, we follow the Buddha's and Bodhisattva's way of interacting with people, matters, and objects. Mr. Liao said that when someone offends us for no reason at all, it is their problem, not ours. If someone attacks us unfairly, it does not concern us. There is no reason to become angry. Even if they attack us physically, this body is not us. Our purity of mind will never be hurt by attacks, as purity of mind originally contains nothing. It is a pity that we do not employ purity of mind when we interact with others and matters. What we use is our false mind, which is not the true self. What Buddhism seeks is our original self before we were born to our parents. The original self is the true mind, the pure mind, which does not give rise to wandering thoughts. The external environment will not affect the pure mind. It does not concern us, so why let it bother us? Why should we be so attached to it? Once we sever all discriminatory thoughts, attachments, wandering thoughts, think about it. What is there to concern us? Thus, there is no reason for us to get angry. All these observations are from the aspect of reasoning. That thus it is said to have achieved perfect peace of mind through reasoning. By understanding the reasoning, our minds will be settled, no longer affected by the external environment. Regardless of what happens on the outside, that which is within will remain calm. In the midst of favorable conditions, we do not give rise to the heart of greed. In the midst of unfavorable conditions, we do not give rise to the heart of anger. Regardless of the circumstances, we are able to maintain our mind of purity, equality, and compassion to genuinely reform ourselves. From the text. I also think that there is not a great person who thinks that he or she is always right. There is not a truly learned person who blames their faults on others. Therefore, when things do not go the way we wish, it is because we have not cultivated our virtues and morals and have not accumulated enough merits to move others. We should always reflect upon ourselves first and see whether we have mistreated others. In so doing, criticism can actually become a training ground to refine our character and to strengthen our abilities. Therefore, we should be very glad to accept someone else's criticisms and teachings. What is there to be angry and complain about? End quote. This teaches us to reform from the heart. And this is the best way to change. In the Flower Adornment Sutra, the purpose of the 53 visits of Sudana was to practice and learn from experience. It is to cultivate and reform from the mind. Therefore, we need to earnestly reflect upon ourselves. I also think that there is not a great person who thinks that he or she is always right. In Buddhism, Buddhas are great persons, and bodhisattvas are heroes. They stand out among others. They do what others cannot do. Thus, Buddhist main halls are called the Grand Hall of Great Heroes. What ordinary people are unable to do, to regret and reform, the Buddhas do. Buddhas are able to correct all errors. Thus, they are great heroes. Therefore, there is not a self-righteous Buddha or Bodhisattva. There is not a great sage or virtuous person who is not humble, who is not patient, who is not agreeable. Humility and respect are a revelation of our virtuous nature. A truly learned person would never blame others or the heavens. Knowledge and good conduct are wisdom. It is revealed from our true nature, whether it is Buddhism or Confucian teachings. The wisdom spoken of in Confucianism also arises from our self-nature. Thus it is called the sincere and honest mind. Sincerity is the true mind. It flows from the sincere mind. It is wisdom. It is called knowledge and good conduct. Therefore, a learned, wise person will never blame others or the heavens for their misfortunes. Therefore, one who complains about others is not a genuine, learned person. When things do not go the way we want, it is because we have not done enough to cultivate our morals and virtues. We have not accumulated enough merits to touch others. When we do not succeed in our undertakings, when in everyday life our speech and behavior are criticized or slandered by others, and things are not going our way, we do not want to blame those who criticize us. Instead, we would do well to reflect within, to understand that this is because we have not yet achieved in our cultivation of virtues and morals. And this is why we are unable to touch them. Therefore, we need to look within first and see if we have mistreated others. When people verbally abuse us, criticize us, slander us, we accept it. Not only will we not have thoughts of vengeance, but also we will have a grateful heart. Why? They have provided us with invaluable assistance, which can help us to reflect within, to correct the mistakes if we have them, to guard against them if we do not. If we are not at fault, we do not blame them. If we are at fault, then we correct our mistakes immediately. Sudana adopted this method when visiting his 53 spiritual guides to completely correct all of his faults and to eventually become a Buddha. The 53 visits concern training the mind through experience. Experiences are the interactions we have with others and matters in our daily lives. Everything and everyone provides us with the means to reflect within. Using the external environment, no matter who the individual is, if we are to regard them as our teachers, we are to regard what they teach as lessons taught to us by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. There is only one student, me. Everyone else is my teacher, my benevolent guide. All are Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. They do not have faults. Only I have faults. This is how Sudana became a Buddha. When we read in the Flower Adornment Sutra, Sudana did not change into another body. He became a Buddha in his own body. He started as an ordinary person and continued until he reached the ultimate perfect enlightenment in one lifetime. And if we learn this ability, this method, then we too are assured of becoming a Buddha in this body, in this lifetime. How did Sudana cultivate? How do we cultivate? First, do not blame everything and everyone else. Blame only ourselves. If other people are disagreeable to us, it is because our karmic obstacles have surfaced. All other people are Buddhas, are Bodhisattvas without the slightest fault. Whatever we see that incurs our dislike is our own karmic obstacles, our own faults. The sixth patriarch of Zen, Master Huineng, said it very well. It is our own shortcoming if we see the faults of others, as we fall back also. When we mind the faults of others, our karmic obstacles will surface and we will fall back. He also said that a true practitioner does not see the faults of others. Suddhana was a true practitioner. He did not see any faults in others. He only saw his own. He was afraid of not having enough time to correct his own faults, much less having enough time to find the faults of others. Thus, he saw everyone as a virtuous person, as a Buddha, as a Bodhisattva. In this way, he also became a Buddha, a Bodhisattva. If we still see the faults of others, it is our fault. Our karmic obstacles come into form. In the eyes of a Buddha, everyone is a Buddha. In the eyes of ordinary beings, even Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are ordinary beings. Criticism can be a good thing. It is not easy for us to discover our faults, even when we try to. When others find them and tell us about them, it will save us a great deal of trouble. Therefore, we should be very glad to accept someone else's criticism, as this is our training ground to refine our character and to fulfill our goals. They have come to help us, to be our benevolent teachers. We simply need to adopt this method of thinking in this way. We will see that there is nothing to be angry about, nothing to complain about. How can we be angry? How can we not accept? How can we give rise to the heart of revenge? This is too great an offense. They are our true benefactors, and we want to repay them with reprisals. This is a major offense. When the Chinese speak of filial piety, we are reminded of Emperor Shun, who lived over 4,000 years ago. In Chinese history, everyone recognizes him as the model of filial piety, able to move heaven and earth. Who helped him to achieve this? His parents and half-brother. After his mother died, Shun's father remarried. When his stepmother mistreated him, his father went along with her. Years later, when his half-brother grew up, he also mistreated Shun. Consequently, 3 people mistreated him. They even tried to kill him. He did not change his gentle heart, but constantly reflected, why can I not make my parents and brother happy? He regarded their actions as his own faults, for he did not see the faults of others. Every day he reflected on his own faults, on how to regret and correct them. In the end, he finally influenced and reformed his whole family. He did not try to run away from home. He did not think of revenge. When Emperor Liao learned of Shun, he chose him as his successor. For if Shun was capable of influencing his family. He was capable of influencing the country. When we want to reform ourselves, we need to have the three hearts of shame, fear, and courageous determination. To have a shameful heart is self-awakening. To have a respectful heart is to be conscience-stricken. Only when we have both of these will we give rise to a courageous, determined heart. Once we have these three hearts, we will immediately begin to correct our faults. There are three methods of practice to help us in correcting our faults. The first is changing through behavior. The second, changing through reasoning. And the third, changing from the heart. Changing through behavior is to find our every fault and then to vow not to commit it again. For example, if we killed living beings in the past, we vow never to kill another living being. If we became angry and yelled at others in the past, we vow never to again become angry. But this is the most difficult way to change, because it does not treat the problem. It only treats the symptom. And even if we currently stop committing the fault by consciously not repeating it, as soon as we relax, the fault will again resurface. So while this method can temporarily correct our faults, it is not a permanent solution. The second method is changing through reasoning. In the example, it is understood that all living beings fear death. Mr. Liao particularly emphasized the futility and cruelty of taking another life to nourish our own. Of all animals, humankind is by far the cruelest. We kill for sport, comfort, and food that we really do not need. We slaughter others at will. Another example is anger. There really is no logical reason for us to become angry. When we understand why we commit wrongdoings, we will be much more likely to refrain from committing them in the future. And then we will begin to practice more good deeds. And this is the way we change our lives. And this is the way we will be able to touch others, so that they too may learn how to change their lives and change their destiny. Amitabha. Thank you.